Welcome, folks. Welcome back to Byte by ewiz Commerce. For those who are watching us for the first time, we share curated stories around AI, e-commerce, and digital transformation to guide global businesses in their digital transformation journey. Joining us today is Mark Brohan, Senior Vice President and of B2B and Market Research at Digital Commerce 360. Mark is known for his exceptional work as a journalistic researcher, keenly observing and analyzing the ever-changing trends in the e-commerce sector. His insights have been pivotal for businesses looking to adapt and grow in the digital commerce and marketplaces. So thank you, Mark, for joining us today.
Oh, well, thanks. Thank you for having me.
Great. Also, a quick background on Digital Commerce 360. You must be knowing it still. I'll just reinforce it once. Digital Commerce 360 is a leading authority in e-commerce research. They provide in-depth insights and data across various sectors, including retail, B2B e-commerce, manufacturing, and their reports and analysis cover all continents of the earth. So do watch out for their reports. They have been a great source of learning for us in all the business decisions that we make.
Wow, we're busy.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mark. So, in this episode, we will deep dive into some of the insights that Mark has been observing around B2B e-commerce, digital transformation, specifically for manufacturers, what has changed, and a few trends that he sees will come up very dominantly. And with that context, I think, Mark, I would like to allude to one of your recent talks that I saw, which was predominantly about the growing disconnect that you have observed between buyers and sellers in the manufacturing sector, which, if I quote your words, has been impacting sales, but also buyer satisfaction and long term loyalty. Could you highlight what this growing disconnect is and maybe some root causes of this?
There's a there's a lot to unpack, but there's distinct trends that apply to any. You can pick a global market; it applies to it. Some of the issues are the same in North America as in India, as in Europe, as in China, which is that 4 years ago, when the world dealt with the COVID-19 pandemic, it basically changed the way it fundamentally changed the way we do business as organizations. And that wasn't just a U.S. trend, although we probably write about the U.S. the most because that's our home audience here. But having said that, in business to business e-commerce, COVID-19 changed the very way that buyers and sellers interact for business over the internet. It's fundamentally changed it. I mean, the reasons were obvious, and a lot of companies have long had the memo on this. But the point is, when other channels shut down, but business did take place, what was the avenue open to them? Internet and e-commerce. So in business to consumer online retailing, as we call it, that's been a fact of life for 20 years. But depending upon the market, business to business e-commerce is bigger, broader, complex, messier, more niche, more singular. Just name the terminology here. But the fact of the matter was, 4 years ago, the sea change hit where buyers are now interacting with sellers ever more so than before. And that began the sea change that we're seeing today. What that means is that a younger generation of organizational managers, they could be teams, they could be single directors, but more commonly they're teams. And this does not vary across global region. You've got younger buying groups or younger buyers that are looking to procure goods and services for their organizationally in digitally driven, more self-service ways. So that's not to say that a multi-channel or omni-channel B2B sales organization is going to change overnight. What that does mean is that change is rapidly coming where e-commerce is becoming the preferred channel, but every single channel from a branch to EDI to to reps is all becoming digitally driven, digitally native, and digitally originated. So the sea change is that anything having to do with the buying and selling interaction today is going to begin and end with some touch point on digital. And where companies today across the globe, by the way, are struggling is it's not just an e-commerce channel. It's not just a branch channel. All of these channels, and it ranges from 3 to 5 to 7 to 10, all of these interact across the buyer seller spectrum, and all of that is digitally driven. So, in short, these younger, more self service, digitally driven buyers, what they want is an increased user experience from sellers. And they want that across all the channels and all the touch points they do business with. And they're very exacting in that. We have research that shows just how short of attention span these B2B buyers have if they don't see what they want across the board from from the sellers. So I mean, it's not just the lowest price. Do you have the terms? Do you have the tools? Do you have the requisite number of partners I would work with? All of that comes into play for these complex transactions. So to answer the question succinctly and to the point, it's all changing. It's all being digitally driven, and the buyers today are much more demanding online than ever before. And many struggle, and many sellers, big manufacturers, small distribution companies, retailers across the globe that sell to primarily a business audience, they are flat out wrestling with this. Not all of it, but at least part of it. So big sea change going on. And what that means is whether it's India or the US or someplace in Europe or even Timbuktu, that there's going to be winners and losers. And we're seeing that happen quite a bit. So a lot going on here, a lot to unpack too, as I must say.
Thank you, Mark. So you highlighted those very key insights, which is the new buyers, the new B2B buyers to be specific, are digital first. They want self-serving modes. They want a great experience, and all the obvious changes, and a lot of things have changed. So how can manufacturers cater to this changed behavior and attack this discontent head first?
Well, it's a couple of things. I mean, the term B2B or business to business e-commerce has nothing in common, I don't think, with business to consumer e-commerce. They're two different critters. They happen to share the name e-commerce, but in business, it's much more defined by buyer, seller, market, audience engagement. So my point is, buying a jet engine or a part for a jet engine is much different than buying, replacement headlights for your, for the factory floor kind of thing. So there's different proclivities, different nuances, whole different ways of doing business depending upon the industry. So it's all different fundamentally from business to business, with the exception of the overarching trends of what the buyers want online and what sellers must deliver. And manufacturers are a case in point. And a lot of manufacturers are struggling with this issue because they may have figured out three things. They may have figured out that they've got an e-commerce site, or they've got their best catalog with their best pricing behind a firewall that can take an online order, which is what many manufacturers and distribution companies call e-commerce. And they know that very well. They've lived that very well. Maybe they've done it for years, or they're far enough along where they think they know that channel. But the thing is, that's only one channel. Manufacturers have very standard distribution lines. So, these are manufacturing companies, big and small. They may have been doing the same way of business, bringing the same distribution crowd, to send product out to the masses for 100 years, 50 years, 60 years, not uncommon. So manufacturers are challenged by many things. For starters, they may understand what they think is their e-commerce channel, but they don't understand that multi-point, omni-channel, sales integration, digitally driven matrix I just talked about. So buyers and sellers intermix with a manufacturer online across many different venues And a lot of manufacturing companies, big and small, are are trying to figure out how that is because that's what the customers want. So they got the memo. I mean, and any manufacturer has got the same memo from their digital buyers an American manufacturer did. So it's all kind of universal. But where manufacturers as a group, and it's hard to generalize as a group, where they're struggling is trying to understand the channel integration as it applies to their customer base. All they know is their customer base is much more digitally native these days. They want much more tools, cross-channel interaction with these digital channels. Harder to do, easier said than done. The other question is, in online retail and business consumer e-commerce, retailers have been shipping to customers and consumers for 25 years, so they know what that is. They know about last mile logistics and on-time delivery and transparency into parcels that don't get picked up or go missing and all that type of thing because they've done this. That's their learning curve. Manufacturers are brand new to this. Manufacturers typically deal in big orders, And when you're shipping something off to a single company and it's only a few items and it's a, high volume, low ticket item, that's a whole new set of last mile logistics, order management, order fulfillment that a traditional manufacturer is not used to. But on the end, but the thing is, that's changing because that's what the digital customers want. So the final challenge is where a lot of manufacturing companies primarily tend to fail is that they can't see the forest through the trees across the enterprise. Maybe the supply chain guys get digital transformation. Maybe the e-commerce team gets everything digital, if you will, but maybe the sales team does not. Or let's say the North American team is they're front and center plugged into e-commerce, but guess what? The Delhi branch is not. The group they just bought in Mumbai is just not. The London office that runs all the European operations is not there on board yet. So there's a lot of internal challenges that are preventing many manufacturing companies, distribution companies of all sizes from having a one size fits all strategy that's right for us. And where they tend to kind of go wrong is they talk to their customers, yes, hear what the customer wants, yes, but then the thing is, where many companies fail, big and small, is they seem to think that the technology is what they need. If they buy the new platform, that's all set. But if you don't think about the platform in terms of how it relates to your back end and your data, which is messy, or to the whole new front end of last mile logistics, order fulfillment, order management, you have not thought through the entire comprehensive digital strategy. So a lot of people in the U.S., for the most part, because we talk with them, we talk to them the most. Where they fail is they see technology as the strategy, as the e-commerce strategy. It's not. Technology is not the business strategy, and that's where a lot of companies are struggling to figure out how to get it right with their audience. Their audience has told them, I want this. Give me this. You give me this, and I'll give you so much business. I'll become a loyal customer. So they hear that, but delivery, depending upon who you are and where you're at in your growth cycle, easier said than done.
Yeah, I love that statement where you say your e-commerce platform isn't your strategy. It's just a technology that enables you to do a lot more that you weren't, but it's not your strategy. And adding on to that part, I mean, you mentioned that the manufacturers should adopt all the multi-channels. So you have your portal, your website. In some cases, there are specific marketplaces. Now, marketplaces when it comes to B2C, we all have great examples. In some cases, I heard you speak about how B2B marketplaces are also a great opportunity which lies out there and not all manufacturers are capturing it. What, could you tell us about B2B marketplaces as an opportunity for manufacturers?
Actually, a very interesting location to watch for B2B marketplaces is India. India is on the cusp of being more advanced with B2B marketplaces across more verticals than the US or Europe. And there is reason for that because e-commerce, I actually came to Mumbai 12 years ago to deliver a keynote on online retail and e-commerce. So I got to kind of meet the market up close in person. And e-commerce was late to India, but then because it leapfrogged from, from a landline to a mobile environment, that set India up for doing e-commerce pretty fast, pretty far, kind of far-reaching, given the mobile base and frankly the population size. So B2C made some critical mass pretty quick, if you will, and because businesses are following kind of the same overarching theme, Indian B2B commerce is a lot more aggressive than other parts of the world, including Europe and maybe parts of the U.S., if you will. So using India as an example, there's an emerging global pocket of marketplaces coming out of India. I forget who the company was, but it's one of your leading steel companies. They just launched a global marketplace for metals. So B2B marketplaces are the fastest growing mainstream digital sales channel I have seen in 25 years of covering any kind of e-commerce. Because why is that? The concept is not new. It's been around for 20, 25 plus years. My colleague Paul and I were kind of writing about the initial ones that failed back in the early 2000s, if you will. So good idea, but the technology wasn't even close. But once again, COVID shifted everything. So when supply chain problems erupted in China at the start of COVID, that sent a lot of companies looking into sourcing product from wherever they could. And over the course of the last 2 or 3, 4 years, that facilitated this momentum of this B2B marketplace explosion across the globe, across niches. I'll use the US as a prime example. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I counted 75 of them. That's it. We knew them pretty good, because it was not that big a market. I counted 250 2 years ago. I counted 500 this year in the US. I will count 1,000. I've been telling people I will count 1,000 B2B marketplaces across the US inside 2 years. And I know I'm right on that. Now, why is that? Because the model is the model is a B2B marketplace is a term. And a B2B marketplace can be defined as any kind of platform in some degree that brings together digital buyers and sellers for the exchange of some kind of transaction. And I'm telling you, there could be 8, 9, 10, 5, 6, 4, 3, 12 different versions of what somebody calls their marketplace. But in the end, it's a platform for bringing together buyers and sellers in some kind of market and then adding, the product mix and the tools that those buyers want to do business with those sellers. So it's as simple as that, but it's all digitally driven. And Amazon Business might be the biggest example of that. I have never seen a faster B2B e-commerce company across any spectrum come across. This is what Amazon does for a living, right? It's just why they're Amazon. But, they took market share away in the industrial supply business quicker than anybody ever thought. And considering that nobody controls the lion's share of any kind of sales in B2B commerce here, which is a $2.6 trillion market this year, Amazon Business grabbed 1% in 2 years. Now, I want to unpack that for just a sec. The fact that somebody gained 1% market share in 2 years by itself may mean nothing, but in a market where you're talking trillions of dollars and one company can put together a 1% share in something in that short of time, that's an amazing metric. And it shows you how big the future for these marketplaces can be. And if you get your niche right, like Amazon's doing, how big you can get. So there's a permanent shift happening, if you will. Marketplaces, whether it's India or Europe or North America, are going to become not just a third wheel, nice to have sales channel. It's going to become as important to your business as your e-commerce site. That's not a prediction. That's just the way things are going to be. So the strategy there is figuring out, just like our technology plan, our business strategy plan, a lot of companies are wrestling with what marketplace strategy is right for me. Is it one? Is it many? Stay tuned. They need to find out. But, that is going to do nothing but grow. And now, will all these marketplaces be around in a couple of years? I don't know. It's the Wild West over here. A lot of money was flowing into it the last couple of years. Now investors are kind of tightening the curves and asking, for bigger return. But, for the last 2 years, get some money, throw it against the wall, see if it sticks. If it does stick, let's grow it. So there's been some fantastic marketplaces that did just that, and they're doing just fine. But a lot of boneyard names coming up too, meaning that they won't be around for long. But it's fun to cover. It's the Wild West, as we like to say. So
So very nicely put, Mark. On one side, you have those digital first self, buyers who are looking for self-serving modes. On the other hand, you have those growing marketplaces where there is a proven way of doing business because the new buyers need it. And now there is this huge question in front of manufacturers: which marketplace or marketplaces should I opt for? Are there any pros? Are there any cons? Because you are putting out your goods, your private information out there for everybody to see, not just your buyers, but also your competition. I'm sure that is going to be a huge concern. How would you advise manufacturers to choose the right marketplace, overcome these concerns to ensure that they are there out there in near future as well, and not get and not, like you said, do not be those losers out there, because there are going to be some winners out there.
yeah, I mean, to bring it down to simplest terms, it's basically what do you want to be when you grow up? I mean, the reasons that a manufacturer would embrace any marketplace, let alone one, two, or three, has got to be decided by the organization as to what's right for you. I mean, for many companies, manufacturing companies, it's we want a new place to sell product. We want new exposure to new marketplace to new markets, if you will. We want new audiences. We want to generate revenue, but it might not be just all those. It could be a mixture of all of those, if you will. So only a manufacturer will have to know where it thinks the marketplace can best serve as a new distribution and sales point for its organization, and the prime reasons are for doing that. I mean, a lot of people on Amazon Business, you know, they will scream bloody murder about the cost of doing business on Amazon Business because it's Amazon. You go there because you know that they will get your product to pretty much who they say they are. But the rap against Amazon on the marketplace side is they want too much, they take over your business, and for any reasons that if you don't do something, they'll kick you off, and you've given them all this, and by the way, blah, 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 it's expensive. But Amazon does that because you do business on Amazon Business because they've got the audience you think you want. Are you willing to pay the entry fee and the ongoing fee to engage with that audience in a way that's going to sell you where you think you want to be? So the conundrum is a lot of manufacturers generally, they may select Amazon Business or even Amazon or Amazon Marketplace itself, if you will, to go and sell what their products are. And they may find that overall their revenue increases because they're selling through a platform like Amazon. But when you do the cost analysis of all the overhead that gets tacked onto that marketplace transaction, it's not as profitable as you want. So then it becomes a conundrum. I'm getting more revenue, but is this revenue generating the profits I thought is it generating the profit or the ROI I need it to be to sell on a new venue like this? So, I mean, that's just one that's just one microcosm of a very complicated equation that a manufacturing company has to use, to figure out what it wants to do. But I got to tell you, we cover them all, eBay and Amazon and Alibaba and a host of others. Alibaba, when Amazon went big, I like to say Alibaba went small. When they came across to the U.S. as an example to sell, their marketplace to an American business audience, they looked at Amazon, and Amazon had the enterprise customers pretty well locked up, or a pretty good base in there. So you know what? They went for the small, the medium-sized business owner, and they're making some really good headway in reaching that small business buyer here in the States, including manufacturing companies that want to sell to a global audience. And I got to tell you, Alibaba's done a really, really nice job of putting together a suite of intuitive tools that makes it easy for these companies to use that platform. I went out there to a show that they did, and I keynoted in September. They rolled out a new online sourcing tool for an Alibaba seller, a small U.S. business owner, let's say, that made sourcing product from over 200,000 manufacturers across the globe actually pretty easy. It was very intuitive. It's one of the best. It's one of the best applications I've seen by anybody in quite some time. So my point to you is these marketplaces will proliferate, but the ones that are going to last are going to be the ones that provide that user experience tied to the range of buyers and sellers these folks want to do business with. That's what's going to make or break a marketplace model for a manufacturing company. Do you have what I want to do and the tools to do it by? Simple as that.
These were great points, Mark, and that got me thinking. Is there a way for manufacturers to, while use marketplaces as a channel to grow, to still retain or build that customer base? Build a loyal customer base, if I may. Is there a way they could do this? Because that's one of the concerns. Because you are selling on a platform, whether it's Alibaba, whether it's Amazon, they own the whole customer experience and they know the customer, so hence the incentives and the commissions. Is there a way you use those platforms as part of your strategy but still figure out a way to build that loyal customer base? Are there any tricks?
Yeah, that's a good question. Here's a couple things kind of going on here, big picture wise. And once again, it's ubiquitous across the market. The same issue is in North America, Europe, China, Timbuktu, India. It's the same. And here's one. Back to our marketplace strategy. There is a disconnect between what companies say they want to do and what they're actually going to do. So here's a case in point. We do surveys, a lot of them. I quote a lot of surveys. In fact, I'm kind of writing one up from McKinsey after we're off the podcast here. And do you see AI as being a big thing for your company? Oh, yes, we do. Says 80% of companies. Do you intend to make e-commerce a big part of your digital transformation plan going forward? Oh, yes, we are. 55% said yes. I mean, those kind of stats, right? So the intent is there. But then the latest numbers I'm seeing is that because of, and maybe I'll stick to the U.S. here, business spending in the U.S. is in a funk. You can talk about job rates and unemployment rate, the thing is, but business technology spending in the U.S. has been in a funk for the better part of a year. And frankly, U.S. manufacturers and distribution companies ended the year on a bad note. I mean, it was negative sales territory, not positive. So business spending is down. Technology spending is being kicked the can down the road. So my point to you is, despite the fact that these companies are saying that, yes, these are big digital transformation priorities for the enterprise, the disconnect is that instead of this happening this year, it's being kicked down the road for maybe 2 more years. So my point to you is that this sea change is coming. This sea change will dictate that as a manufacturing company, you flat out will have to have a marketplace strategy right for you in some capacity, but that might not happen this year because of budget, because of internal conflict over what it's going to mean, or company buy-in, or semblance of those. So there's this big lag time, and it's coming. It's a sea change, even a tsunami, but it's not going to happen today. but it's shifting more quickly across the timeline than I've ever seen across the years I've been doing this. So that's the key point, which is 18 months, 2 years from now, you'll see a lot more of the commonality of a marketplace strategy or digital transformation spending or companies, big, small, otherwise, doing better with multiple sales channel integrations that tie to digital transformation than they are today because of the reasons I just cited. It's underway. The fire's lit, but the timeline is not the next 6 months. It's the next 2 to 3 years.
So it's going to be tougher for manufacturers to, because of the limited spending and for because of the concerns in the business environment, whether it's their own website, their own B2B website, or whether it's marketplaces, it's still going to be a struggle for them to build that loyalty with their customers.
Yeah, there's a couple of things kind of going on. I mean, I call it popping the hood, on a car, like a car. You pop the hood and there's something wrong down there, but you got to look at the engine. All you know is the car's not running. So there's when you kind of pop the hood on the car, to kind of use that analogy to see what's going on about some of the issues I just talked about, is not only is there kind of a lag in business spending tied to e-commerce development projects. They're being delayed because of cost reasons and some of the other ones. There's a different, there's new technologies that are coming into play now. So legacy is out, cloud's in, SaaS is in. Cloud SaaS tied to AI is very much definitely in. But, connected commerce, to use a term, headless commerce, to use a term, all of these are becoming the new debate about what does this mean to my e-commerce technology and platform strategy? Do I need this? Do I not need this? What do I do? So not only are there buyer demands that are increasing on the organization, prompting them to have this internal discussion about resources and what we can do now versus later. The other part of the equation is now you've got new technologies like headless and connected and AI coming on board here. And you got to figure out, is that right for me? And if so, where does that fit in? If it does, but e-commerce has a way of changing the technology whiteboard, wipe it away. It's technology, of course, right? So it's pretty fast moving, but it's fast moving in a way that presents unique challenges in this day and time to manufacturers and distribution companies. So it all figures out, but there's a lot of, is it nice to have versus must have technology going on behind the scenes? And that takes time to evaluate,
So that brings me to the next important question, and you did allude to that as well. Is AI, or specific to be generative AI, a good to have technology or a must have technology for manufacturers?
Uh, there is AI is here. I mean, it's been around for 20 years. It's just machine learning. So, if you've talked to a chat box on an e-commerce site, which you've done probably for many years, depending upon where you live, that's AI. Personalization is AI. That's been around forever. So what you're seeing here is, to boil it down, yes, AI is real. AI will become even more real. AI will become even more present in e-commerce across 14 different touch points of the business digital technology ecosystem. In other words, it'll show up in marketing, customer service, CRM, order fulfillment, order management, last mile logistics, platform, supply chain, procurement, on down the road. So there's all of this bubbling along here, if you will, but it's not holistic yet. It's not mainstream. So where you're seeing it is where it's actually being used first, which is personalization, supply chain management, product recommendation tied back to personalization, or some aspect of marketing and merchandising. So that's not a new memo. That's been around for 3 or 4 years, but that's kind of the starting point for a lot of companies to figure out, what else can we do with this stuff? And that is as unique to a company as to what they do for a living. Here's a perfect example. Pittsburgh Paint is very known globally, but they're one of the oldest paint manufacturers here in the U.S. And they sell a lot of paint to body shops that fix your poor car that got in an accident. And I was talking to the chief digital officer over there at PPG a few months ago, and I said, "Hey, all this AI stuff. Uh, any applications for actual e-commerce you guys are doing?" He said, "You bet. A pint of paint in a body shop." I said, "Well, that's interesting. What do you mean?" So to boil it down, apparently for a body shop to order paint from a manufacturer like Pittsburgh Paint, it's a very involved process because apparently there's a lot that goes into even a small amount of paint that goes on your car. It's very custom, very expensive, very this, very that. And before, it apparently was a very manual process to figure out, I need this much in this quantity to do this, and and get it shipped here. So Pittsburgh Paint actually came up with an AI application that made the whole ordering of this paint easier to do, to figure out, to order, and then as the last part of the equation, they brought e-commerce into it. So instead of like an AI tool, it's kind of planning out what you need, how you need it, what's going to look like, all that. They tied it together with the configuration of it, the quantity of it, the logistics of it, and then now go ahead and order it. So that's one of the first examples I've heard about from mainstream manufacturing where an AI application came to bear between both order management, order fulfillment, supply chain processing, and e-commerce. But that's where you're going to see this kind of application come up because for PPG, apparently it was a problem. So their tech guys got together and found that AI was a solution to that problem. And I think that's where you're going to see more of this become mainstream as individual organizations figure out how they can use these new technologies to apply and fix some kind of e-commerce problem or realize an opportunity within an organization. We don't know yet. It's too new for all this, but we're going to cover it. It'll be fun to cover. So
that was an interesting one. I mean, specifically because it was very specific to manufacturing. I mean, the typical use cases that I have seen, and I'm referring to one of the use cases of AI that we deployed recently, was a very simple and basic one, but really helped our customer, which was we deployed a support bot, an AI bot, which basically automated routine order queries. That is all it did. If you ask it, where's my order, it would just tell you your order is in transit. What's the status of my order? This is the status of your order. That is all it did. But for the customer, it saved close to 20 to 25% of their sales reps time. So for them, they loved it. So
yeah.
I
Like here's another example. There's a $2.2 billion distribution company called Partstown located here in my hometown of Chicago. And they serve, restaurants and food service operators. That's what they sell, like equipment, like pots and pans and all kinds of stuff. Far beyond that, but that's what they do. They just rolled out what they call their parts predictor. And all it is an AI application laid over an enhanced search function that helps you find and configure the order quicker, faster, better, cheaper. So it saves you time and money getting what you need. So that is the first iteration of where AI from a distribution standpoint is going to happen. I mean, that's just one example, but I think we've written about several of the same type of thing. So if you look at one of the places where mainstream AI will pretend to B2B e-commerce is it might be a second tier chat box with advanced search functionality beneath the main search box behind a login portal where if you know what you want or you need it to configure faster, cheaper, better to replace something, that's where you're going to see iterations of AI come into place in the next 12 to 18 months because we're talking to a lot of companies now that are kind of piloting that. So those are the first true examples that I've seen, from the trenches here, where AI is being applied directly to e-commerce and not just sales, marketing, personalization, or merchandising. But this, I mean, it's hard to generalize because it's going to be all over the place. I mean, I count, we count what the digital ecosystem is. There's 14 different pieces of technology, from a PIM to a platform to a CRM to order management, that connect to a spoken hub that's called digital technology, if you will. There's 14 of them. So is AI going to show up in all 14? You bet. Sooner as opposed to later. But yeah, so it's fun to watch all this stuff. But is it mainstream yet? No. Is it on the way to becoming mainstream? Depending upon how you define mainstream, the answer is yes. The short answer is a lot of experimenting going on, but it's going to become mainstream. Yeah. It's going to reinvent how things gets done, just depending upon what your view of the world is on it. So
Great. So you already answered one of my questions, which was about an interesting success story using AI. So I have one final one because we touched upon that at the start, which is could you share one success story of a manufacturer using marketplace as a strategy and actually succeeding in it? A short one.
you want an example of a manufacturing company that's actually using a marketplace to succeed?
Yeah, B2B marketplace, which could be part of their go-to-market strategy or, one of their channels, for example.
I'll do you one better. There's a company in upstate New York. They're called Bay Fastener, and they're a distribution company. And 60% of the manufacturers in the fastener industry sell through this distribution company. In other words, they've been around for 63 years. So, they've got fantastic ties, if you will, to manufacturers that make fasteners and screws and bolts and all that stuff. And they've been selling online for years. I mean, Michael Eckinger is the the CTO out there, and we've been talking to him for years about this stuff. I point them for a reason. I couldn't think of a better company poised to launch a marketplace than Base Systems, and they did. And they had the tea leaves going in. They had 60% of all the manufacturers that were flowing product through their company. They had the reach to the entire industry, thus they formed the marketplace. So the tea leaves were good. Now, here's where it got interesting. They spent 2 years building the platform, building out the marketplace strategy, and launching it.
Oh,
And Michael is honest because he's going to tell you that the payback for a marketplace operation is 3 to 5 years longer than they initially thought.
oh,
It's that long a play. So I said, well, why is that? And one of the reasons, the slowest reason, is onboarding customers, because they do business with the entire fastener industry. So yeah, they've got the manufacturing, they got the product they can ship through the marketplace. Just come place the order. Not that simple. One of their biggest challenges was onboarding customers for this. So the orders you're talking people that fax orders in, and you're having to kind of walk them through why a marketplace strategy might be easier. So to Michael's point, it might take a day or a few hours for a small guy to figure out how to switch over his manual orders to digital through the marketplace. But what if you're a much larger company placing much bigger orders, and what you've done for generations is all paper? It takes time. It's not just a new way of thinking, it's converting all of that into a digital transaction flowing through a marketplace. So in the end, it's a win-win for everybody. But Michael's point is the timeline for doing that has convinced them that the ROI on doing a marketplace is 3 to 5 years out versus 1 to 2. So it's not for the faint-hearted. It's not for those who don't have resources. And B, if you want a fast ROI, you're not going to get it. So that was very eye-opening, I thought. But that's a good example of one company specifically and what their expectations and results are for a marketplace. But you know what? They've been at it for 3 years now, and they're getting there.
Nice.
It's just taking longer than they ever thought possible because it's a new way of doing things. It takes time. So
So the technology may take 2 years to build because it's an industrial, but the adoption, the change in their customers' behavior is 3 to 5 years.
exactly.
Interesting. My question was slightly different, but this is definitely interesting. What I was trying to understand is if a company had to sell via a third party marketplace, let's say Alibaba or Amazon, is any success story where companies have succeeded doing that, and how would you advise manufacturers on getting started with this, with marketplace and AI as the new tech that their buyers are actively asking for?
I'm kind of blanking on a specific company. If I had a little bit longer, I could we can certainly come back to that if we do this again. But I'm blanking on a specific company because we cover marketplaces so much. But to answer your final question, it all comes down to just basic blocking and tackling. What do you want any participation in a marketplace to do? If it's to generate new revenue, then think through that. Look at the economics of the marketplace, figure out if this particular marketplace or several has what you want to get you the revenue you think you want to generate through this, and do from that. But if your primary goal is different, which might be for many companies, it's acquiring new channels. It's acquiring new markets. It's going after new areas to sell things. And that's different than just we need to kind of generate more revenue. The two can be tied together, but it's just basic blocking and tackling. You've got to decide what is right for your organization and then plan accordingly to fit what's right for your organization. As simple as that. That seems pretty generic and plain spoken. Easier said than done. Easier said than done. I got to tell you, it takes time to do all that. Doing due diligence on a new channel and a new company, a new platform, it's a lot. It's a lot of time and effort. So
Yeah, time and
the
intent,
company's
I
got to
would say.
decide if it's up to them to do it. I think it is. A lot of companies are doing it, but you know what? It comes down to what's right for you. So
Understood. Anyway, Mark, thank you. I mean, that was my last questions, and I won't, keep busy with us because you mentioned that you had another appointment. So, thank you for your time today, Mark. It was great understanding the huge disconnect that you have regularly pointed out in the B2B buying and selling, specifically with respect to manufacturing, your insights on marketplaces, and that interesting AI and marketplace story. I'm sure our audience is going to love it. So thank you again,
I love
and
doing these, and thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
we'll love to have you soon for another. So I'm going to ask our audience to suggest another topic after listening to this. So
I
happy to have you.
I like to say I'm a bad penny. I keep showing up, so I'd be happy to do it. Just name the time and place. Look forward to it.
Awesome, awesome.
All right.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. All right. Take care.